Counties play a critical role in fostering conditions for economic growth, including labor market policies and closing the workforce skills gap. Next, we welcome Secretary of the United States Department of Labor, Alexander Acosta. The son of Cuban refugees, Senator Acosta has held several presidentially appointed leadership roles in labor relations and justice. Most recently, Secretary Acosta served as the Dean of the Florida International University College of Law. Please join me in welcoming the 27th United States Secretary of Labor, Alexander Acosta.
Good morning. Well, thank you, Mr. Cox, for the kind introduction. You know, this is a great time to speak with all of you because our economy is booming. You all know the statistics, the unemployment rate, the job creation rate. I want to share a few different ones with you this morning that I recently heard and I thought were particularly important. Wages are increasing at the fastest rate that we have seen for nearly a decade. But here's the really interesting part. Wages for the bottom decile of individuals increased 6.5% over the past year. That's really incredible. And we've seen all these new hires, and that's great. 70% of all those new hires were from outside the labor force, were individuals that hadn't been working or even looking for a job, that looked at our economy and decided, we want to work, and joined the labor force. And here's one other. The wages for individuals who make things, goods-producing industries, those who make things, those who build things, those who construct things, those who manufacture things. For non-supervisory goods-producing employees, increased more than $2,500 last year. That makes a big difference to an individual and to a family. And I wanted to share those with you because I think it reflects the truth about this economy. And the truth is that this economy is getting not just more people back to work, but more people back to work that weren't thinking of working before, more people in jobs that are paying better and better. You know, the quit rate is something we don't talk about much, but it's at an almost record high. The quit rate is the rate at which people quit their jobs because they find another and better opportunity. And that's a reflection of this economy. So what are the challenges? The challenges are preparing individuals and offering them the skills that this economy is looking for. And so for the first time in history, for month after month after month, we've seen something we've never seen before. We've seen more open jobs than individuals looking for jobs. So I want to talk a little bit about this and a little bit about how we can approach this together. And I say together because all of you are very much our partners in this. 84% of counties have formed workforce training partnerships with local chambers of commerce, cities, states, state governments. Forget not 84%, 100% of counties have done that. All of you are focused on workforce. Many of you are part of our workforce boards or chair our workforce boards. And you understand that workforce investment lays the ground for a future. So what are we doing and how can we partner together? Well, the Pledge to America's Workers brought together businesses and industry that pledged to reskill, upskill, provide opportunities, and so far we've had pledges for more than 6.5 million opportunities. Apprenticeships. Apprenticeships are another incredibly important approach. You know, As we look out there into this economy, I think we need to take a step back and evaluate what signals do we send to young Americans. I was in Missouri last week, and I was touring an apprenticeship facility for the United Brotherhood of Carpenters. And it was great. And they were getting skills, and they were learning, and when they were done with their apprenticeship, they were 15 credits short of a college degree because they had an articulation agreement with their local community college. But here's what I found most impressive about it. They showed me their rate sheet. When young men and women left that apprenticeship program, their lowest starting wage was $28 an hour. That is a good family-sustaining wage. And so the question is, what signals are we sending to young Americans? Are we saying you only have one path to success and all other paths are no good? Or are we saying there are multiple paths? Are we saying you can go to college, you can study, you can go be a lawyer or a doctor. Now you're going to make a good wage and you're going to have lots of debt and it's going to take a while. Or you can go be an apprentice carpenter and you can go build something and you won't have student debt and it won't take as long and you'll also have a good wage. And decide what you love and pursue what you love and choose what you love and what makes you happy, because the goal is a family-sustaining wage. Is that the signal that we're sending in high schools? If it's not, as county officials, as local officials, what should you be doing about that? I think this is so important because we have young Americans out there that might not pursue education because they're told it's college or bust, rather than they're told there are multiple paths to success. And so apprenticeships are something that we are talking about quite a bit. I'm very proud that since we started talking about this, over the last 2 years, we have reached almost 500,000 new apprenticeships. And we're in the final process we have pending at the Office of Management and Budget. The comment period closed, and we've provided our comments on the final application for industry-recognized apprenticeships. So we can have registered apprenticeships and industry-recognized apprenticeships with the goal of achieving 1 million new apprentices over the coming year. We've rolled out our apprenticeship.gov website, and it has 3 parts. One is for career seekers looking for jobs. One is for educators, so they can talk about their programs. And a third is for employers. And there's an artificial intelligence aspect to this that identifies opportunities for apprentices and puts them up there. I have a request. When you go back home, look up the apprenticeship.gov website. Think about whether there are ways to plug in the opportunities in your county into that website so that more individuals can see it. Now, over the next month, actually this month, we're going to be announcing grants of $150 million to community colleges to further support apprenticeships. These grants are a little different. We asked community colleges to find matching partners in the business community. The Department of Labor has never done that before. And so why did we do this? What's more powerful, a community college program unattached to the local economy, or a community college program with business partners that have put in their dollars into the program so that that community college is providing the skills those businesses need, so that those businesses are invested not just through a membership on a board, but through their dollars in those community college programs. And I bet you that curriculum is focused on the local skills that are required, and I bet you that when it comes time, those businesses that invested in those programs are going to hire the individuals that are graduating. And so those $150 million that are going to be awarded are actually more powerful than that because it has a 1-for-3 match. So in essence, it's going to be $200 million to community colleges to foster these programs. And I should say, we're going to announce a second round of grant opportunity because I'm very excited about the concept of having businesses and community colleges come together in a partnership. It is a win-win. Businesses get the skills that they're asking for. They get input into the community college system. Community colleges get financial support, and they get insight into the skills that are being required. Now, I want to talk about some other challenges to the workforce, because while we have a very low unemployment rate, our labor force participation should increase. And that's why I said it's so important that 70% of new jobs are going to individuals outside the labor force, individuals that aren't working. And we need to engage those individuals so much more. And so I want to talk a little bit about individuals that are leaving prison. The best thing that you can do for those individuals is help them find a job. The best thing you can do for the economy is help those individuals become part of an economy rather than recidivate. And the best thing you can do for your community and the safety of your community is give those individuals a job and a stake in the community, again, because that is the biggest predictor for individuals not recidivating. And so reentry is so important. We put out about $85 million in reentry grants, and we're going to be doing a second round. Later this March, we're going to be having a conference where we're going to invite reentry organizations to Washington. And we want to provide them with information about all the opportunities that are available federally to get support and to get assistance. This is so important. And one note on this, I was visiting a prison, and it had a culinary program. And I thought that was great. And I asked, what's the biggest obstacle when you leave to finding a job? And in this particular state, and I'm going to talk about licensing in a minute, chefs had to be licensed. And if you had a felony, you couldn't get that license. When you go back home, think hard, and I know it's very difficult, and I know there are a lot of local interests, but think hard. Does every license that excludes a felon really need to exclude that felon? Is it really the case that someone that doesn't have, that has a record can't install fire alarms or can't be a chef? Is the best thing for society to exclude individuals from job opportunities? There's another national workforce challenge that I want to talk about, and that's opioid abuse. Princeton professor Alan Kruger, and I cite him in particular to show how bipartisan this issue is, because he worked for President Obama. He did a survey, and he found that 47%, almost half, of prime-age men who are not in the labor force took a painkiller not last month, not last week, but yesterday. 47% of men, 25 to 54, not in the labor force, took a painkiller yesterday. And the follow-up question, was it a prescription painkiller? And about a third said yes. So a third of men not working took a prescription painkiller yesterday. That's a problem, folks. That's a real problem, not just for those individuals, but for our economy. And so we have to work together on this opioid issue. It is so important. The Department of Labor is sponsoring some pilot programs. When individuals go into treatment facilities, treatment can often take months. What are they doing while they're being treated? Are they watching television, or are they preparing for the next phase of their life? So what the Department of Labor is doing is providing funding for workforce training while someone's undergoing treatment. Because at the end of treatment, if someone does not have a job, again, what are the chances that they're going to go right back into their former lifestyle? I also want to talk about a second program that I saw, and I thought it was so interesting. And this was in Belden, Indiana. Belden works with employees. This was a tour that I took in Indiana. Belden works with employees who have tested positive. And they're able to do this because of a unique law in Indiana. See, in Indiana, if you test positive and you undergo certain steps, like this pathway to employment that I'm going to talk about, there is a liability shield against the employer if something goes wrong. And so the employer is incentivized to do this. And so this is what the pathway to employment is about. If a potential employee is denied employment due to a failed drug test, they have a chance to participate in a personalized rehab program. They go in, they get assessed, and if there's a likelihood of rehabilitation, they can keep their job. They might be transferred to a different job category within the employer, but they can stay working, so long as they stay in treatment and they stay clean. So I met this gentleman. He'd been working for about 15 years. Then he went on drugs. And I asked him why. His daughter had been arrested and went to jail. Pretty tough. Here's the question. Is he better off continuing to work so long as he stays in treatment and stays clean? Or is he better off being fired and going home and going into a negative feedback loop where he's like, I don't have a job, my daughter's in jail, what's the point? Taking more drugs and then getting more depressed. The fact that in Indiana there are mechanisms, legal mechanisms, to keep people in their jobs is a very, very good thing. And I'd ask when you go back home to think about that and think about what all of you could do so that you incentivize employers, where appropriate, to keep individuals employed, because people do make mistakes. But when they've made a mistake, keeping that attachment to the workforce is critical, because once they leave that workforce, it's really, really hard to re-engage. Now let me talk about occupational licensing. There was once a time when only 1 in 20 jobs required a license. Now there are different measures. Some say 1 in 3, some say 1 in 4, some say 1 in 5 jobs require a license. But whether it's 20, 25, or 30%, that is way, way, way too many jobs that require a license. I was in one state where the license to install fire alarms was more expensive than the license to practice as a lawyer. Think about that. You are, not you all, but the system is imposing financial burdens often on those who can least afford them. A city recently came up with a license for dog walking. Not for babysitting, that's okay, but dog walking needs a license. And so the Federal Reserve has estimated, the Federal Reserve study out of Minneapolis, that 1.4 million Americans aren't working because of this. Another study said 1.9 million. Brookings estimated 3 million. This is a very hard issue because at the local level it's very difficult to unlicense, and I fully acknowledge that. But it's also an incredibly important issue for workforce. And one of the reasons why is because it discourages people to move into your counties and states. Geographic mobility, which in our society should be at an all-time high, is actually pretty darn low. And it's low because when individuals are thinking, should I move? One of the questions is, how hard is it to get a job in the other state? How hard is it to relicense? And I want to talk about that issue in particular in one context. And I think that this is there's such an easy answer here that there is no reason why every state shouldn't take action. I want to talk about that in the context of military spouses. There are a few of you in the room that know about this. Our men and women in the armed forces serve our nation and defend each and every one of us. And often, typically, we recruited them as an individual. And along the line, they got married and started a family. And so the military is having a little difficulty retaining these families. And I say retaining the family because you can recruit an individual, but you retain a family. And these are high-skilled individuals. And I think military spousal license is one of the reasons why. So I want to tell you a story about a military spouse who is providing health coaching for nearly 4 years in one state. And then the military service person was transferred to another Air Force base and continued to provide health coaching online to former clients until the spouse got a cease and desist because a dietitian in the new state was complaining that this person was practicing without a license in that new state. So you move to a new state, you continue to communicate with your former clients, you continue to do what was perfectly legal, what was your job, what was your career, but this new state tells you, stop your career. You may be married to someone who's serving the nation, but the nation does not want you to practice your career. Her name is Heather, and the story is not unique. It happens to tens of thousands of military spouses every year. I met an attorney who ended up getting a job at a supermarket because of a licensing issue. We could call in for story after story after story. This just isn't right. And so if you take on licensing, first I would say if licenses aren't necessary, eliminate them. And if you can't do that politically, at least focus on military spouses. It's not that hard to say if a military spouse is domiciled in our state because a military service member is there on orders, they can continue their career so long as they're licensed in their home state and so long as there is no disciplinary action against them. I don't know how folks can be against that. These are individuals that are serving our nation, and the spouse is serving right alongside them and should not have to sacrifice his or her career. let me wrap up by just saying, as a general approach, one size does not fit all. We believe very much in the importance of having flexibility and variability. And so across our programs, to the extent the Department of Labor has flexibility, to the extent the Department of Labor has pilot project authority, we welcome the opportunity to work with each and every one of you for outside-the-box programming. We have granted almost every WIOA waiver that we have been asked for, because one size does not fit all. New York is different than Iowa, which is different than Texas, and California and Alaska. And so if governors want to change things up a little bit, ask for the waiver. If workforce boards want flexibility, ask for waivers. We can't do this at the federal level. Workforce education has to happen at the local level. And to the extent we have flexibility and authority, we will push it out to all of you. We trust you. You have every incentive to do what is right for your community, and you know what is right much better than we do. And so I thank you for your efforts. All those individuals looking for jobs and holding jobs, thank you for your efforts. And as you go back home, please, two things. Think about how to better empower local educators to realize there are multiple paths to success. We need to stop thinking that there are only certain jobs, because every job can lead to success if folks love it and if it provides a family-sustaining wage. And secondly, think about military spouses. What's happening to them is wrong. Thank you for all your efforts.